Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. The lives that we're not living here. And so I would like to share some ideas on the parallels of selfhood. I want to share the context of a multidimensional being, what that could imply in this modern time. And to add more perceptions than I normally do. The implication of the lives that we're not living here is a suggestion of selfhood in a context of parallel universes. One thing we notice that has been happening as a regular trend in history is that people tend to think the world is just what they see, and then they tend to consider it is not what they see. And we have been fighting over this. We have been arguing as a species over our sight for as long as we can remember. I would say that I've had experiences, I would say playful experiences in the inner realms where it's been like throughout the day, for 1 week, I remember I experienced my inner realms, the weather of my inner realms being of the sort, where I felt that I wasn't the only version of myself existing alongside all my memories. Like think about it as if like you have a memory of yourself 10 years ago. Now let's say you forgot that memory and let's say you suddenly remembered that memory. It's as if that version of self becomes accessible. Now one considers that a memory is a phenomena that happened and we lived through it, and that's how it became a memory. But in some sense one can say as the relationship with time experientially changes, the future self is like a memory that you can't connect to yet. Do you know? You see, the world was silent. There were just creatures around, and there was a world around, unconscious world, then unconscious self, creatures came about. Then these creatures that we were just movement. If you wondered what the purpose of life was back in the day, it was just to move a bit further, to continue moving. So, meaningless movement, a lot of it. This meaningless movement became meaningful to itself. We tapped into the changeless in a changing world, and for the first time, the ecosystem wasn't the story of our bones. What we found in the ecosystem. I would say that what I'm trying to say is that it's a sort of oscillation in history between people feeling, okay, what's in front of us is the only thing that's here, and then people multidimensionalizing it, if I can say that. So that's what we find. The more we go back, let's say, for example, the 6th century, where important events took place that changed culture forever, you can see that in many narratives and stories of the world, it has to be multidimensional. Even if I was to say a story in this dimension, it needs a beginning, middle, end. The moment there is the beginning, middle, end, it's a possibility to see one story with the beginning, middle, end, or the beginning of one story, or the middle of one story, or the ending of one story, as if 3 are different dimensions. Something I personally, I would say, it's been a while, but in 2013, I had a relationship with the universe as if all of existence was divided into 3 archetypes. And I'm not joking when I'm saying this. That means for me, I saw the idea of creation, the idea of maintenance, and the idea of destruction as three archetypal forces and spirits of the universal sector. That means when things are being created, I am in the company of the creative spirit. When things are just being maintained, nothing is being added, nothing is being taken away in some sense, or there is a balance between what is taken away and what is added, that is in some sense, I am being visited by Vishnu. And I would say the maintenance, the spirit of maintenance is there. And when there is destruction, when there is anger, when there is rage, when there is the ending that must be met, one must visit Shiva. And these are forces of nature. Anyways, I kind of went on a tangent, but the whole point of it is saying, I'm trying to say that the world wasn't multidimensional, it became super multidimensional, then came back to kind of like a sine wave going down. Now we're reaching a point where we are reducing the multidimensionality of the realm, and the simplest way we're doing that is by nullifying imagination as if it is the shadow of reality. As if there is no imagination, if there is no reality. But I would say that is true on some level, but it doesn't mean imagination is limited to the laws of visible, observable perception. It is not. We can imagine the impossible and then invent it. That's what Edison did. That's what Tesla did. They saw something that didn't exist. So the question comes, where did they see? Where did all the inventions, all the ideas, all the efforts of human activity, where are they being checked first? You know? It kind of feels like physical activity. Me raising my hand, this is the double check. As if in my inner realms I have already moved my hand there. You know? So anyways, from the singularity of the realm towards the multidimensionality of the realm. Now, memory is the multidimensional component. Without memory, without an ability to notice points of reference, life would be just like one color. That means the reason the light goes in. So let's speak about light here. Let's say that how would I say it? I would say the light in the room is the first reference point. Once there is one point of reference, other points of reference can arise. Once the person does one thing right, then they can implement it. Then they can pretty much do it a couple of times. When the person, I'll give you an example, like when I was younger, when I would kick a soccer ball, I would kick it with my toes. And a lot of people would tell me, don't kick the ball with your toes. It would give it force, it would make it was like a hammer hitting the ball, but it wasn't the right way to kick it, I would say. It would hurt the feet overall. Okay, the music is on, all right. So. I would say new experiences change us. They change us by giving us access to a new point of reference. I feel we have never been one person. We have been the witness of an ocean of imagery where something occurs in that ocean before it's expressed. That means it's as if before I say all these words, I am living. I am living somewhere else. And what I'm saying is that behind our eyes, if light defines locality, behind our eyes where there is no light, it's location based on past light. It's location based on light that is no longer there but kept alive in the mind somehow. When I said that week, I went through a week of kind of experiencing a sort of parallel selfhood. That parallel selfhood was me, for example, stopping in the middle of the day doing nothing because I felt other versions of my own energetic experience are in. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say you know how easy it is for human beings to be like, yeah, we're from just this dimension, this universe, this place we're in, but now imagine it was second nature, it was as normal to be alive in two parallel universes with two different bodies. So right now, imagine you had a physical body, like we yin yang phi this, in the sense that you have a physical body you have a known body in an unknown world. And let us say you have an unknown body in a known world. And these are the two parallel ways of living. Or let's say you, in one parallel, let's call it parallel universe one. In parallel universe one, let us say you are a mathematician. Let us say in parallel universe two, you're a carpenter. Okay, and it's as if this carpenter, let's say in parallel universe 2, is trying to think about what kind of table to make, and let's say in parallel universe 1, the version of you that is a mathematician makes a discovery, makes a genius discovery. Then the carpenter suddenly finds a way where it's as if it's like, imagine there was an interconnectivity where the self in parallel universe 2 automatically updates in accordance to the findings of the mathematician in parallel universe 1, you know? Or I could give a better example even. Like I could simplify the example. Parallel universe 1, we have an expert carpenter. Parallel universe 2, we have the same carpenter, but it is not an expert. Suddenly this carpenter in parallel universe 2 comes to build a table. When it comes to build a table, it sees how is it that it's so perfect, as if it's intuitive, as if it knows. I am suggesting that there is simultaneous existence. You see, there was first a world, then a self, then we are starting to realize the self is multidimensional, then we're starting to realize the world is multidimensional. This is such a huge implication because a multidimensional self in a multidimensional world will mean a non-local being. It can't be localized if you are multidimensional and the world is. And if the multidimensionality of these two are different, then it becomes an impossible. It becomes impossible for reason to break dance on thin ice. Welcome everyone, Jimmy and welcome guys. If there's any questions, if whether they are kind or unkind, feel free to ask whoever is listening. Anyways, I'm trying to say that maybe now it doesn't make sense. Maybe now we have to see ourselves as specific individuals because we don't know what to do if we were multidimensional. We haven't even built a civilization that acknowledges a multidimensional person. We have created a civilization that and acknowledges a singular person through language. Language is really keeping us from experiential multidimensionality. But the issue is, if we all became multidimensional, it could be a bit chaotic to how we would live in one dimension. So that means, okay, I'll give an example. Let's say you have 17 parallel senses of self. Let's say, as an example, hypothetical example, there is 17 versions of you in parallel universes, not infinite parallel universes, not like in one universe you're combing your hair left and the other universe combing your hair right, and endless ways of that. I'm just saying, imagine there were only 17 ways you were combing your hair in different parallel universes, in front of the mirror or something. Okay, so 17 levels of selfhood in an unknown world. Okay, so, or let's say each self has its own accompanying world. Let's grant multidimensionality for the self and world. So it would be as if like these 17 senses of self. Now let's say, um, let me make it 10. Let me make it 10 senses of self. Okay, 9 senses of self. Okay, and 3. Let's say in these 9 parallel lives to one energetic moment. Imagine in one parallel life, imagine 3 of the parallel senses of self decided to stop moving. They decided to stop doing whatever they were doing. And the moment they stopped, imagine the other 6 parallel senses of self had more energy. Imagine. So I would say, I feel we are moving towards more of an awareness of the multidimensionality of nature. And because we're aware through ourself first, it's unavoidable to actually experience, it's like it's unavoidable to experience the multidimensionality of the self, especially at this time. If it was back in the day, it would have made sense. But now, the whole, even from a view of character development, it's all new dimensions being added. That means, how do you get a new experience? You can't do the same thing. So you can say behavior, if the person, let's say the person's higher self. So many people talk about the idea of the higher self in the New Age community. So let's say the higher self, your higher self, is 9 parallel universes. So the person's trying to get to their higher self, in this life. Yeah, it's my higher self, it's my higher self, not realizing that the self is not an object. It's an energetic position, and even above that, an authorization. I made a point of light earlier. One thing that could be said about light is that it's kind of moving as a wave particle, even though that is being, that view of like the wave particle view on the photon is changing. I would say there is something unique I noticed in nature that made me conclude all of human intelligence is light, and that the ancient Egyptians were onto something. And let me tell you what I mean by this. If you look at how a squirrel, the animal squirrel, runs, it leaps. It literally leaps like a sine wave, like a vertical sine wave. Okay? And when you look at a snake, the snake moves in a horizontal sine wave. If you look at how a snake moves, it's like a horizontal wave. When you look at how the way a squirrel runs, it's like a vertical sine wave. Now, if you were to see both of these waves together, I would say it's as if light is the command. Light is the instruction. It is not just the world. It is not just what, uh, 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 it's not just the permission for the world to be here. It's also an instruction on what can be done. I honestly feel all of us are the reflection of light. That means I look in the mirror and I see my reflection. I close my eyes and wonder about my memories, and I'm treating those memories as if it's me. And a lot of people are doing this. We treat our memories as if they are us. This is why the person suffers. This is why the idea of sin is there. When they do something wrong, the person feels as if like it's them. I'm just trying to say that if the world is a more multidimensional place, how can we have the same singular dimension strategy towards it? And if there is a potential that there is parallel senses of living, what are the chances that parallel lives can communicate? So you see, there is a view of time going forth, which the idea of Buddhist reincarnation, you can say, kind of fits into that, where it's as if you were something, you are something now, you will be something. You know, not only there is a line of past lives, but there's a line of future lives. You know, and now how you live is creating your future life. But I would say, if the person didn't think there was the idea of change, there would only be worlds being created. There would be, the person can't say they have a past life, they can't say they have a future life. They are all of them. So when you are all of them, you cannot be one of them. So think of yourself as a person. If somebody comes up to you and says, "Who are you?" and you remember some memory or something, and you give an answer. Now that answer is one response, one approach to the sense of self. How many memories of versions of yourself do you feel is lingering in the human mind? As I'm speaking right now, honestly, the words I say evoke the archetype and the character. We may think as human beings, why do we have, like I've heard Noam Chomsky say this, like this sophisticated use of language that human beings have? You know? This sophisticated use of language, I would say it is only the sophisticated use part is coming from emotion. And emotion is literally the whole moment responding to a part of it, to a part of itself. We can't be individual unless we have a sense of what is collective. But strangely, we find ourselves as individuals who haven't become a proper collective yet. But we had to have a sense of collectivity before we could be individual. So that collectivity is invisible. So I feel we actually went through a phase of invisible worldhood, invisible selfhood, then visible selfhood and visible worldhood. And this part, the second part of it, guys, when it comes, it can interchange. It's very complex. I would say it's one of my biggest philosophical mysteries, that did the subjective evolution arise when the human being noticed itself in the mirror, or it noticed the world in the mirror first? You see, there is a view that you look at something and you notice you're separate from it. You look at, for example, like a computer, what do you call it, monitor, and you know you're separate from that computer monitor. But if you were to look at existence, how are you existentially separate from everything else that exists? The existence is equal. That means human beings, when it comes to existing, I mean, it's equal to some degree. Forget the cultural and social and all the survival required, just on an existential level. We are equal in existing. They're even equal in existing in the same species. But these 2 points of view are being not considered for now, I would say, in the cultural program. Because if we all exist, that's our common denominator. That's our common denominator. That's our biggest source of empathy. That we exist and we would like to continue to do so. Now, it's the experiences of all these existential moments that set them apart. And I'm saying that this experience could be, in some sense, like different fingers on the same palm. So right now, I could be like the index finger. Then let's say, I don't know, there's a there's a version of me. Let's say there's, in some parallel universe, some guy who started a podcast and has named himself Mr. Without. Everybody thinks they're within in that universe. So the guys come and said, Mr.Within. So do you know what I mean? That would be like the other finger. And yet the palm doesn't change. And that is the biggest clue. Energy is the biggest clue that the soul is possible to be acknowledged. Energy is soul. It cannot be created or destroyed, but it changes from one form to another. It just has the addition of consciousness. So consciousness plus energy or conscious attention plus energy equals soul, really. I can't even say conscious, because the moment I say conscious, the difference between awareness and consciousness is that consciousness needs a form there. That means you are conscious of something, or you are conscious through something. You know, but when it comes to awareness, awareness is unconditional. Awareness doesn't have to explain itself. It can't. It just is. It's a pure level of just being. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this yogi, he says, first the I am myself comes. Then the I am myself leaves. Then the I am all comes. Then the I am all leaves. Then the I am comes. Then the I am leaves. Then nature is. These two words, this yogi says, nature is. Now, if we consider, instead of we are in a singular dimension and could there be other worlds, what if we entertained it as if we were in multiple dimensions, and was there ever a possibility to only be in a singular world? That would be the nature is part. Where beyond any sort of I thought, identity, certification of the realm, energy is just being here. That means when I think about myself, like everybody else, like I do, like if my physical existence was like, if I was to die, I would have fear. You know? But when I rationalize it, when I reason it, I see that I'm energy. How could energy be afraid of change, of changing from one form? How could potential energy changing into kinetic energy be afraid? So you see, on some level, when I consider myself as an energetic being, it's like, what's gonna die? Energy doesn't die, you know? But when I think about myself as a cultural person in a certain framework and with a certain face, with a certain identity, with a certain way of living in this life, well, of course, you know? The wind pushes the small. This is why the outer realms, I would say playfulness and simplicity and sincerity, these three ideals that are kept in the outer realms, you will pilot smoothly. You know? But in the inner realms, it's different. In the inner realms, you have responsibility for the most intense and chaotic movements of your own mind. You see, to the pilot of an airplane, imagine this idea, there's a pilot of an airplane. To the passengers, the plane is not being moved by them. They look at nature and they're like, yeah, we're not the pilot, I mean. You know, it's like, it seems like the gravitational force of the sun is like causing the earth to orbit, you know. So it's like the sun is literally piloting, as Buckminster Fuller and Marshall McLuhan would say, spaceship Earth. We're on a rock. It's like we're on a spaceship, but we're not in it. We're on it. Do you know what that means? Can you imagine like a spaceship with a very incredible interior design kind of flying in space, but all the people in the spaceship are sitting on top of the spaceship. They haven't gone inside the spaceship yet. There are moments where I feel like the palm. I don't feel I am a person. I feel I am just a presence of nature. Before I was named, before I had any story to tell myself as a temporary creature, it's like, okay, attention, world, they're both here. And so how much of the world is here because of our attention, and how much of the world is here before our attention? And it's so poetic that our attention has nothing else to do other than serve. I am telling you, there is this is the ultimate position of the individual. You serve yourself, then you get bored, then you serve your civilization. That's it. Where else is left? Either you serve yourself, either you do nothing, or you serve the world. 3 options. You do nothing, both yourself and world get angry at you. You serve yourself, you may indirectly somehow help the world. You may be like that billionaire philanthropist. But if you serve your world, if you just treat your world as your future collective body, all of it, that means right now we are at a level of responsibility for experience in the individual biological body. Right now, if somebody's attention instantly moved, let's say you see where your eyes are, like first person point of view, let's say you closed your eyes, yet the same first person point of view attention drifted, let's say, 100 meters outside of the window into the sky suddenly. Just literally your attention, just like how your view, let's say it drifted suddenly 100 years in an instant, 100 meters outside of your window into the sky, and you were looking at your own, let's say, house and window from outside from that view. If that was to happen, instantly there would be a realization: mind is not limited to body, body is limited to mind. Instant freedom. No longer there is suffering, because suffering is interpreted. That means you could be going in the, you could be walking the most chaotic situation. Does that mean there's suffering? You could be in the most pleasant and joyous state, Does that mean there's suffering? You see, it's like the story you tell yourself suggests how your soul runs into the void. Or runs out of it. I can tell you the mind is not limited to the body. I can tell you that we think we dream only when we sleep. What if I told you the mind, like the heart, has a command? Literally, it's instructed to continue. That means the brain is required to keep the heart, and the heart is required to keep the brain. And metaphorically, this would mean your simple human decency is required to be active 24/7. And I would say your, I don't know, your, let's say, intellectual uh, grasps of desire also. What it is we don't know what story to tell about attention's source. We have reached a point where I would say we have reached the great mystery. Was the idea of man man-made? If there is a hollowness of language, there is also freedom beyond everything language is implied. We are stories in the void spinning around ourselves. Unless we choose to evoke as a species a collective dimension of purpose. Let's say, even I don't have to make it even too metaphysical, I could say, let's say in the future cyberspace happens, you can instantly connect yourself to cyberspace and you live a bunch of lives. So you could live in, like, let's say 7 different parts of the world at the same time in cyberspace, in a cyberspace copy-pasted version of the world. Okay? So if the person could do that, it would mean that the mind has the potential and will have the potential and the ability to administer multiple bodies at the same moment, whether they are cyberspace simulated bodies or whether they are, from a mystical standpoint, they're parallel senses of self, and we're becoming aware of it, It's like if this life was the tip of the iceberg, how many other ways could the unconscious be alive? That would mean right now we are one body empathizing with other familiar patterns. We're one familiar pattern of psychology. If it notices other familiar patterns, it can see what it's like. So when somebody cries, the person can see they can be pushed that hard as well, so they empathize. But I would say if the person had 7 bodies, that would be and imagine 7 different dimensions of empathy. It could be what feels like an absurd idea to us now may become a very common casual idea, that human intelligence moves beyond the definition of human, that it becomes pure mind, and to become a pure mind means to return to the inseparability of nature's will. This doesn't mean personality, identification, ideology. It just means we return to to an ultimate home beyond the language threshold. I would say there is, in my life at least, I have had an interest in theosophy and the potential for interdimensional beings and whatnot. And I've even entertained, I could tell you, moments of narrative where, as if like there is invisible guidance, but also I have seen that invisible guidance also as a self that I am not aware of yet. Do you know? Imagine like in one dimension you are nothing, in another dimension you are like, you know, uh, okay, let's say in one point of view you are a terrestrial person, and let's say in another view, let's say you were an extraterrestrial, uh, how would I say it? I'm trying to say, okay, let's say in one setting, um, it would be like how I experience some people who know me on a know my actual first name, who call me based on my actual first name, and those people who know me by, for example, the name Mr.Within or something. Do you see the? It's like I am still one being, yet those are two different ways of being. You know, and I'm saying we could be all of us here right now, one being, and these are all the different ways we're being. You know. At some point, I even made the idea of the guardian angel equate the idea of the future self. But the only way this could be possible was that if the future self becomes a collective intelligence beyond time. Right now, our bodies are in time and in space, but because the mind isn't an object, we can't know if it is in time or in space. We know that the mind is required for us to fathom mind, to fathom space. You know, we also know that all definitions in language require a history. You know, so technically, knowledge is hilarious in the sense that every branch of knowledge is it has a sort of its own history from the moment it disconnected with everything else. So I would say it's as if physics has memories. The idea, the concept of the study of the physical realm, I would say it has a memory of, and its memory is all the scientists and physicists who contributed, as if it's like the concept which we access now is not just the concept. It's been in some sense sculpted through various events. That means who I am right now speaking to you, I can tell you it's like literally from the beginning of my existence, conscious existence, I feel literally the earth has been sculpting who I am now. Nature has been preparing itself for this moment. And it's strange what instruction there would be, you know? what possible, you see, for me it's not, the question is not like, some people say, how could something come from nothing, you know? For me, the question is, how could there be movement? The mystery of the original forces movement is as mysterious as where did things come from. The movement is as mysterious. The movement is like, we're just seeing the puppet. The atoms are like the puppets. What is puppeteering it could totally surpass any sort of science we have extracted from just seeing the tip of the iceberg. In like movies, you see the character is in an intense moment, like an action movie shootout scene. Suddenly the character remembers, gets a flashback of a moment before they, like defeat who they're about to defeat. It's like a moment where the person returns to another way the mind existed to itself. So I would say if we were to close our eyes and wonder if there is parallel lives, instantly the answer will be most likely yes. That means when it comes to the inner realms, you can visualize it in endless ways. That means I could visualize literally like my whole skin becoming diamond level, so that nothing can like pierce. Like there was this show, Attack on Titan, where let's say a certain giant character could suddenly become diamond. Their body could become diamond, like a diamond shell, so nothing could like touch the person, you know. So I could close my eyes in my inner realms and visualize myself becoming a diamond golem, humanoid golem, you know. But it would be a situation where I would say in the inner realms that has been a probable potential parallel life, but in the outer realms not the case. So in the outer realms, it's set. The chess game is set. You're already on the roller coaster. The roller coaster is moving. But when it comes to the inner realms, how we are choosing, at least how we experience the roller coaster ride, that is coming from a decision making of various, of a view of various parallel senses of self. So that means if you can close your eyes and you can remember more than one memory, what does that imply about who you are? If you have access to all these memories, how could you be them? How could you be just one memory? Do you see? So we are treating the present moment, the memory of the present moment, which is in this spot being made, as us. But we don't treat the memory we had of us 10 years ago as us. But it's the same thing happening. The same act. What it is it's honestly, it made me kind of like get sad one night because I felt all human life is reacting to emptiness. Everybody you see, all those people who act tough, all those people who act weak, all of them subconsciously, I feel it's like the normal should be everybody should be freaking out. Why? Because we're in the middle of nowhere. Right? So because we have ignored emptiness, we want to fill up this void rather than being brave and staring at the ultimate fear. It is the ultimate fear. Non-existence is the ultimate fear. That means it's like the person has a fear of spiders. It's like, well, that fear is nothing compared to the fear of non-existence. That is the true fear. Do you know? So that fear is there in the subconscious. You know, it is not that people get an existential crisis. It's that it is such a strange situation that to not get an existential crisis is like lying to yourself. It's like the illusion didn't hug your eyes properly, and so the person suffers. I will tell you, this world has chaotic components to it. I feel it is much more efficient and safer to treat ourselves as unknown minds than known bodies that have to keep values stable, or if they don't, it's like they will fear. So here's the thing, I don't know how people are comfortably living in this world unless they actually study emptiness. I can tell you, there was a point in my life before 2011, I had ridiculously, I had blind desire. Or my desire was making me blind to the world I was living in. What I wanted out of the world through a presumption that I knew what it was actually denying me to actually see the world I'm in. there's this very nice feeling when the person gets tired of constantly filling the void. And I would say those in life who have been embarrassed, shunned, even rejected by their ecosystem, whatever it is, I don't know, whatever cultural program you reside in. It's as if there is a strength that comes for those whose eyes have already seen the battlefield. That battlefield is void. It's the void. It's the most chaotic thing. It's like, forget monsters under the bed. forget, darkness and evil in other dimensions or whatever. Forget evil people. It's the void. That means one thing I know. That means I could see the most chaotic person and I would see them and I would say, buddy, when are you going to notice emptiness was here before you? Bow. Bow to the void in which all return. And now is the only opportunity. That is it. It's honestly like all these talks I'm giving, really, it's one emotion. I could tell you one supreme emotion where it's like a lion biting. Literally, it's like a lion jumping in the sense that it's such a temporary life. And it goes quick. Why? Because we live slow. If we sped up our life, if we started living so much faster, we might be able to in the future go at the speed of light, and then if we're not in light, who's gonna die then? So I could say moving at the speed of light could be conceptual immortality. Sorry, not conceptual immortality, but like some sort of, that would be some sort of immortality. I mean, time is really what ends us. The change and how the world moves forward. Sorry guys, there was a phone call. Yeah, so reaction to emptiness. Everybody's freaking out, but they don't show it. Those people who act really tough, they freaked out. They're scared more than I would say the rest. They're not scared of the physical complexity of life. They're scared of its meaninglessness. So they have to do something intense. I would say we should have the same fascination for the meaning of the world as Archimedes, this mathematician, who I believe he saved like a village using like pulleys and catapults and his knowledge of mathematics. And then there's a strange way where he passes where he's on a beach trying to figure out some mathematical mystery. He's about to figure it out, and then he suddenly looks and he sees there's a Roman soldier. And this Roman soldier runs up and he looks at the Roman soldier and says, "Let me finish this before you kill me." The Roman soldier doesn't let him finish it, and he kills the guy. Kills this great mathematician. And for me, I thought if there was a continuity in the inner realms, he probably became the answer to his problem. We see it in shows like Family Guy, Rick and Morty, this sense of time travel. In the show Rick and Morty, they have a very incredible idea, like the main characters made portal technology. And so like a portal technology and an infusion, that means creating a bridge between two parallel universes. That means, how interesting is this? That a portal is a bridge between dimensions. It's just a mini bridge. It's not a gate. You know, it's actually a bridge. That means the distance between, there's no distance that exists between dimensions. That means it's like the space between the branches, the void is sandwiching the dimensions from one another. So if we were to make a bridge, the void has no, I would say no, it has no content. So it can't be, technically it's a bridge, but the bridge doesn't have a size. Because the void can't be given a measurement. We can measure what's in the void. We can't measure the void. We can just say it's there. Everybody, like the X-Men on a micro level, their DNA is unique, which means they get access to a view of the world that nobody else has. Now the next task comes if the person wants to direct their eyes towards serving their world or going beyond their world. These are the two options. Either you live in duality and you can do your work, or you in some sense go into non-duality and then you are no longer working. It's as if you stop becoming an identity, so you feel your whole day is like the world moving. There is no you anymore. It's as if if there is a you, that's still the world moving. It's as if the person thought they had an ego, and then they're like, wait a minute, the ego is me, so how can the ego have itself? You know, and it becomes incredibly void after that. I have had dialogues with the unknown. I would say conversations with the unknown. And these conversations are not like as if a person speaking to something else. It's literally a knowing one accesses when they are not. Uh, Think of it this way. Think of it, you're an antenna. When you are at the person frequency, you access everything related to personhood. You access all your personal memories, even everything. It's through that frequency. Now, let's say you change the radio station, and it was something that wasn't personhood. Then you would access that which isn't personhood. So what that means is all those people who want to hold something in the unknown, impossible. I can tell you that I have actually done nothing. And that is why the intelligence beyond the human framework, because nothing is not human. Nothing is not a human idea. So when the okay, the volume of this is ridiculously loud. Hold on, guys. This guy was asked in an interview, so tell me about your history. The guy's like, I got 3 kinds of history. And the person was like, wow. You know? And the person's like, one history is my individual history from the moment I was born and, so far up to the present. And then the person's like, my second kind of history is my universal history. I'm a universe buddy. I have memories that have nothing to do with the human framework. They have to do with universal activity, you know. And then the person's like, okay, this guy has the universal history and individual history, and then he's like, what? The interviewer's like, what's the third history? Imagine. And the person says the third history is a me, a sense of me that has no history. That is the third. That is the all. That is the Akash. That is the memory of your memories. That is the super mind, super soul. Call it whatever you like. You know, a lot of people have thrown spears of language at the unknown, but few have actually managed to aim. You know, I look at my eyes and they are timeless. Because unless there is light of a changing world, unless the information is processed, what is there? Imagine 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, no longer afraid of emptiness and fascinated by the unknown. That to a point where suddenly we saw, imagine, violence dropped and alien species in the void, let's say poetically, playfully in invisible dimensions were like, yo, human beings became peaceful. How did they do it? And they all came and asked us. They asked the human species. And it was like, imagine our answer was that we realized we don't have time for violence. We don't have time to, break human potential, really. Can you imagine Einstein walking to give the most important speech of his life and a group of thugs beating him up, you know? And he imagined Einstein wouldn't have become Einstein. That's the thing about violence, that it takes more than it gives, so it finds itself eventually in hell, in a sort of self-made hell. Because when there has to be a balance with nature, you know? It's like you're in a world once, how do you want to walk in it? And we have been told we can walk only in limited ideological structures, but so much unknown stands, A species that counterattacked the fear of the void for the search for meaning, for real meaning. And I would say if there is a possibility, it's a multidimensional landscape right now, that it's like there is so many ways of life on this planet, but we just can't see it because the light hasn't been turned on. I could say even if we were to see an extraterrestrial, it would be our sensory perception. It would make no difference. Let's say an extraterrestrial landed right now. We can't say there's an extraterrestrial in front of us. We can say it is only our sensory perception being received. The mind is living multiple lives. It has to continue. but the body can only live one life. And so I think this is where the nobility of, uh, I don't know if I could say self-integrity comes. Where it's as if the person's like, imagine the person wanted to be a follower, and the person's like, okay, who should I follow? You know, should I follow that person, that ideological system, that kind of technique, that kind of atmosphere, that program. And eventually, the person would come and see a mirror. And then they would be like, who's that guy in the mirror? Should I follow him? And you see it's yourself. As if people have not just come here to see the world. What if you have also you have opened your eyes here to see yourself, to see what you would have been? Because honestly, a lot of these talks, like what inspires me is to see what else I can see, really. On some level, I'm giving a talk, but on another level, I'm trying to like break through everything I see, kind of like borrow Thor's hammer to find the glitch in the simulation, you know. And the glitch is really language. I'm telling you, if there is an illusion here, it definitely has to do with how we're interpreting sound. I'll share with the audience a playful story. In 2013, I was like the most. I think I broke the world record of being the most Tibetan Buddhist Persian guy. And I remember I experienced this moment where I was sitting at this table and I had this kind of messed up dream. Um, Anyways, just this disturbing dream. And so what happened? So what happened is I remember I was curious of this idea of guardian angels, of this idea of other beings. Could it be that we're not really alone? That our loneliness is as much of an illusion as we think our collectivity could be. So what did I do? I literally Googled. I Googled like, all right, how do you communicate with guardian angels? I Googled that, guys. You know, with this Tibetan Buddhist kind of bead I had around my neck. I remember it said you got it was on this forum, and on this forum there was this person, and it was so funny. Like now when I look back at it, it was like so funny. But then at the time I was so into it. So I was so what do? I go and the guy had given this strategy, had written this thing on this forum. He's like, I've tried this so many times, it works. You know, so many people tell me it works. It was like one of those kind of entries in a forum. And the guy said, you go and sit down and you say, I am ready to meet my guardian angels or something like that. And I remember I was like in this kind of like new age, you can say, atmosphere of mind. And so I go sit down at this table and I say this, and in my inner realms, these three, I would say like twice my height, kind of sized. I feel I don't see anything in my inner realms. I just feel like there's suddenly three uh, giant, not giant, but like double my size, three presences in the room, right? It was weird. It was as if literally like I just turned the knob by saying that sentence. I turned the knob of my own inner realm sensitivity to the world. But anyways, keep this in mind. I'm saying it's in the inner realms. That means the room is empty. I am seeing this in myself in the moment. So What happens is that later on I realized any sort of attention can animate. That in that moment I chose to see a context. I created a vacuum to be filled with meaning of whatever I wanted to see in that moment. And I would tell you, then my comprehension and understanding of interdimensional beings changed. It was no longer image. When I realized language is just the tip of the iceberg, it's a very small percentage of what is actually going on, then you have no other choice left but to rely on your direct experience. So you actually, it's as if someone who you never thought of reinventing the wheel your whole life, you know? And so suddenly you reach a point where you see the wheel was a simulation. It was language. So then you are left to find the truth of your real lives in some sense. And what's remarkable is that that truth is collective. There's some things that we will never see as long as we're individuals. We can't. It's literally like our own self-definition is the limitation. It's like you tell someone, hey man, can you help pass like the remote controller, and the person's like, I can't do it. And you know they can, but the person says, I can't do it. And if they say, I can't do it, you think they can do it? If the person is giving their own mind instructions of incapability, how could the person become capable? I would tell you, it's hilarious. You go to New Age, a sort of New Age atmosphere, you know, and there's so many different strategies towards self-help. But when you go to the yogis were like, hey, all of you, just shut up. And why did the yogis say that? Because silence held the meaning. That all words, all concepts, all our desires, all our value systems, from silence and stillness has come the animate story of our lives. So that silence and stillness, I would say the younger you are, and you notice it. I remember I saw this TV show recently, but it was called Money Heist or something. There was this guy who was called the professor in it, and this guy was just a step ahead, and he was calm, you know. There was, even though the guy was like, he was doing something absurd, but I don't know. There's something when you realize your mind is not a concept. I feel like real life begins. So that was one experience. I felt presence. I have never seen things, I would say, in the outer realms, not even colors, but I have felt the sense of a presence. That means I have walked into a room and I have felt as if there is something else in the room. But there is no image, no concept, nothing, just a feeling, as if like somebody was standing behind you or somebody was standing beside you. There is all of those, and if like think, check this out. Let's say, I mean, it's not something I'm saying. It's like every person is an electromagnetic phenomenon right now. Has an electromagnetic field. Think of static electricity. And times where your hair has been raised. So we are an electromagnetic phenomena. Now, if we are the electromagnetic phenomena, think of it this way, that you become aware of the electromagnetic field of your body as you. So anything that enters that electromagnetic space will leave an impression. It may not leave an image impression, but it leave some sort of interference. Slap in the chat section, I would say I have no idea what you're talking about, man. It's like if you can frame some sort of question maybe out of it. Um, Anyways, what can I say, guys? That was an experience. The sensitivity to how the moment is changing before you put your own input leaves off impressions. You can say in chess, if you start as the pieces that make the first move, you are not in a state of observance. You're in a state of implementation. But if you are, it's like there's a way of looking at a moment where you are moving in it, and there's a way of looking at the moment where you're not moving in it, and you're noticing the movement of the moment before you move in it. That means you have access to additional dimension. So I feel that is like the fascination, isn't it? That's the fascination of modern times. All those people around the world who are entertaining the idea of spirituality, it is fascination with the mystery of the roots of one's existence not being limited to what they are just experiencing in a sensory way. You know, it's as if the world is keeping us in a certain way, then we are keeping ourselves in a certain way while the world is keeping us in a certain way. So, whatever certain way the world is keeping us, it can be uncertain to us or certain, it's up to us. It's like we're on a motorcycle ride, and some people can choose, they're like riding a motorcycle, and they can choose to hold the steering wheel or they can choose not to. Not the steering wheel, I mean, imagine a motorcycle with a steering wheel. In 2015, I experienced a different sort of interdimensional relationship of a parallel selfhood. I experienced my whole moment move. When my whole moment moved, it was as if like the mysteries of the content in the moment weren't as important as what is this whole thing moving. You know, for me, when I look at the purpose, trying to wonder about a purpose to life, really it's like on a physical level, on a material, through a material analysis, the purpose is to just be this newest update, this new evolutionary update. That means it's like it's an opportunity to experience a more sophisticated lens of creaturehood. That's the physical purpose, to exist, to be like, what's the purpose of a bird building a nest? It's just it's nature. It's part of the environment. It's like a flower that is connect. Its mind is connecting it to the soil, not its body. You know. Rabindranath Tagore says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. In this quote is the algorithm to building an advanced civilization. If we can make service translate into individual joy and collective joy, we win. The species wins. If we can make it as joyful to see the overall thing advance rather than just one part of it advance, I understand the whole. I would say anybody who's gone towards Zen Buddhism and whatnot, there's a sort of pulling of a vow that one must first enlighten themselves, and that is the greatest enlightenment the world can have. This is true. But I will tell you, more important than that is the opportunity for the collective enlightenment, which means that before you try to be perfect, then move in the world, just move in the world. And if there is moments of perfection, bless them. That means, this may be strange, but when I was younger, of course I was raised in Iran, there was a religious context there, I would pray for my future. That means it's like when you're done praying, when you're done praying for whatever that's happening now, you're left to pray for the future, really. And I would say to pray for your future means you're just waiting to live it. Let the era of the multidimensional begin again. Honestly, the best thing every human being can do is try to update whatever they see. Or rather than update, to at least add dimensions. See, you can contribute to something without changing something. I mean, like, that's the point of our minds. Our minds are here to see angles to things. And so the issue is every person's eyes being unique, every person's perception, they're seeing a unique angle to things, but that is not being shared. It's like the insight comes in the inner realm, never steps out, and passes. Imagine you were a trillionaire, and suddenly, somehow, you were gifted like couple trillion more. And so at that point, it's like you have experienced that intensity. Then you look at your world and you see only the world is left. So I would say when it comes to experience, direct experience, we exchange the metaphor, it is the same. Our eyes live so that our voices have purpose. It's so cool, like all of us are being energy right now. All of us have a skeleton in our body right now. It's like, who can be afraid of a skeleton? You are one, you know? It's just, what is the ultimate task in the void? You know what, I feel like I'm going to create a new term for this, the Terran opportunity. The opportunity found in Terra, our planet. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I feel this is a good point to end off. We don't know because in some sense the language is limited and we can't know. All that I'm trying to suggest in these talks is that there is unknown skies and there are inner skies, and these skies haven't been flown to. Only few people on this planet have truly wondered about the mystery of what is this mind activity going on. How is there a mind active? Do you know? And now that it is active, why? So after you answer all the how questions, you're left with the why questions. So the why question can never be avoided. So if it is tackled first, it could serve innovatively, you know. You know, it's like you're you wonder why something is there, you wonder how something is there, and you wonder why it's there. Totally different extractions of information from the realm. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I will be in the Discord section. This I'll be on Discord for those interested. Watch for us yourselves.